How do you master leadership, judging leadership, and more importantly, cultivating self awareness? Today, I want to talk just briefly about the Fort Pillow Massacre. This happened back in 1864. And if you don't know, I'm just going to go over briefly what it was about. In 1861, the Confederates, they constructed a military, a separate unit. And they're supposed to take over a particular area. To be more specific, they were supposed to capture some opposing soldiers. So in a way, you can kind of compare and contrast that to our current ICE installment. Yes, I know ICE is for immigration and custom enforcement, but the way that they operate is like a separate military unit with a specific task. And that's what this Fort Pillow Massacre was really all about. It was named for its general, Gideon Johnson Pillow, and it overlooked the Mississippi River. And this was an important part of the Confederate defense system. And that's why, one part, why they were targeting this. And so what happened was they launched a raid. And the idea was to capture the soldiers, get them to surrender and capture them. In fact, that's what they were demanding. But instead of capturing them, aka arresting them, aka getting them to surrender and be complicit or compliant, they stormed the area and they killed the troops. At least 300 soldiers were gunned down by these Confederate forces, and the majority of them were black. And even though these soldiers surrendered, were not antagonistic, complied with the overtaking of their Confederate grounds, they were killed. Union survivors, they later provided an account, and they said that these troops were massacred. Massacred. And of course, the person who oversaw these soldiers said that they did nothing wrong, and the men were killed because they refused to surrender. This is the Fort Pillow Massacre. And it happened over 100 years ago. It was on the cusp, if you will, of the Civil War. You might be wondering, why am I talking about this massacre? Because it's very, very important as to what we see occurring in our lands today. History repeats itself, especially when we are unaware and unprepared. I want to welcome you to this podcast. Today we're talking about how to master leadership, how to judge leadership, and more importantly, how to be self-aware and why it's important. You know, a lot of us, we talk about the president and we talk about what's going on, and to an extent, we have every right to be outraged and concerned. But these people who we are pretending to be upset at are not the problem. Specifically, our president is not the problem. And some of you may say, why? How could you say that? He's in charge. He's doing this. He's doing that. All of that may be true, but guess what? People don't have no power over you or anything else unless you give it to them. And the reason why I started out with the Fort Pillow Massacre is because I wanted to make a very basic and blunt point. What we see today, what we are experiencing today, is not new. It looks different. We're more modernized, and these different entities have different names and they have advanced weaponry. It looks different because it's not the 1800s. We're not on horse and buggies. We don't stay in huts. We have advanced infrastructure, technology. It looks different. Might even sound a little different. Perhaps it even feels a little different. But the truth is, it's not different. In today's world, being able to effectively judge leadership, being able to be self-aware, it's an invaluable skill. And the reason why it's invaluable because it allows you to assess leadership from a conducive level. The true qualities of a leader have nothing to do with what they look like, what they sound like, even if you like them or not. That's not how you should judge or master leadership. Leadership is about integrity. It's about transparency. It's about adaptability. It's being able to navigate through challenges and motivate people towards a common goal. That's what leadership is about. Leaders are supposed to provide inspiration and vision. Guess what? You don't have to like people for them to inspire you. You don't have to personally like people to tap into their vision. That's one of the reasons why we got some of the problems we have now, because people have made decisions based on likeness. Likeness is a tool. And while it's okay to be liked and it's okay to want to be liked, it's okay to like others. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. That's not how you master or judge leadership. Another quality of leadership is being able to effectively communicate. Communication is the backbone of everything. Why is communication important? Because everything we do begins with a thought. So it's not just about how we communicate to others. That's very important. But it's also how we communicate to ourselves. It is especially important when evaluating leadership. Do you think the leaders that are before us today convey their ideals clearly? Do you think they employ active listening skills? Do you think they are transparent? Do they work on building trust? Do they work on ensuring that people are aligned, or at least persuade people to be aligned? Or is it about power? Is it about prestige? It's about likeness. A good leader should also have empathy and understanding. Why? Because it fosters a supportive environment. Leaders are supposed to understand how they're relating to the people that they lead. Now I want to make a point here. Seeing something on social media one day, and the person said, and it was just a post that says something to the effect of, maybe your message isn't getting across because people don't like you. And it wasn't directed towards me. It was just a social, how they have those posts where they do text. And it says something about people, message doesn't get across because people don't like them. Or your message isn't getting across because of your delivery or something like that. And while our tone, how we address people, is very important, That's not how you judge a leader. In fact, that's not even being self-aware. I'm going to tell you something. When you're trying to master leadership or judge leadership or evaluate leadership, you got to start with yourself. And it takes more than 30 seconds. Sometimes we rush and make impulsive decisions based on our feelings. But feelings are fleeting. A lot of people make decisions based on what they saw on social media. How they felt. But as I alluded to earlier, likeness is a tool. In other words, some people perform very well. They get you to like them very well. And we make the wrong decisions. I'm going to give you some very practical examples. How about con men or con women? Grifters. What about Ponzi schemes? What about these people who take advantage of the elderly, call them with a scam, send your money in? Or what about these people who pretend to be celebrities and prey on the vulnerable, exploit their issues? Some of these people get paid. Go through history. We have some very historic con men or women, and they've been all across, different facets. Some of them been in business. Some of them have been religious leaders. Some of them have been in other areas, investment, life coaches, relationship. We can go down the list. Doesn't matter if they're male or women. Doesn't matter what they look like, what they sound like. But do you know one thing that all grifters, con people, do you know one thing that they all have in common? Likeness. In fact, if you think about your life, just think about to yourself. You don't have to admit it to me or anybody else. Think about the people who have mistreated you in your life. Maybe you're one of those people who have never been mistreated. Everyone has been nice to you and honest, and you've never had this problem. But pretend, indulge me. Think about the cinema that you've watched. Think about some of the songs and stories that you've heard from people. What type of people is it that usually grift them, con them, misuse them, exploit them? Are it the people that sound mean or look mean or that we don't like? If you're very honest with yourself, it's probably almost always the opposite. Do you see how likeness can be used as a tool? When you have a toolbox, and I got a little toolbox at home, I do a little stuff around the house. But I don't use every tool for every project. Have to get the right tools out so that I can have an effective or efficient project. A hammer won't work for everything. It's a good tool, but sometimes you can't use it for every project. Screwdriver, very, very good tool, but sometimes you don't need a screwdriver. You need a different tool. And when you're talking about mastering leadership, judging leadership, being self-aware, you need other tools than likeness. Integrity is the foundation of a leader, because a true leader that you can trust will act transparently. That means they're for real with you. And being for real, if you know anything about life, it's called yin and yang, balance. That means everything ain't always good. People are not flawless. Perfection is an illusion. So if you come across somebody that say, girl, I got it all together. A homeboy, I got it all together. I ain't got no problems. I ain't never had no issues. Your antenna should go up, because that's not being transparent. That's not being for real. When you assess a leader, you need to look at their morality, their ethical standards. That doesn't mean counting up all their flaws and or their accomplishments. Yes, you should take that into consideration, but true integrity, it builds confidence and encourages people to follow you. And when people can be transparent, what they're doing is cultivating a culture of honesty and accountability. True leaders should also be resilient. They should be able to adapt. You know, I just talked about this Fort Pillow massacre. And I know in the trajectory of things, the world seems to be moving at a very fast pace. And it seems to be changing. But the truth is, it's really not changing. It just looks a little different. And a true leader should be able to communicate that to the masses. You know, I did a speech a year or so ago, and I asked the crowd, who or what influences you and why? And the crowd kind of went a little silent. Probably looked at me because I was giving a speech on homelessness and housing issues, and they kind of looked at me, you know, how a dog looks at you, or a deer. I don't know if you ever been driving down the highway and seen a deer run out in front of you. They're a little startled. But this is a very important question, because the reason why we have a lot of the issues we have in our country, in our states, in our cities, in the world at large, is a direct result of not just leadership, but the people who chose them. Let me say that again. A leader put their pants on every day, just like you and I. They're human beings. The system is not failing. It's doing exactly what it was designed or allowed to do. We will have better leaders if we made better choices. We will have better leaders that mirror the expectations of their people if the people who chose them took more time and gathered some insight in terms of judging leadership and self-awareness. It amazes me how many people are outraged at what goes on. And when we look at the behaviors of some of these people, they actually mirror the behaviors of us. Let me give you some very practical lay examples. There are tons. We don't have the time to go through all of them, but I'm just going to draw some analogies, compare and contrast. Have you ever heard of Will Smith? Do you remember he was at the, the Oscars or Emmys, or Academy, one of them shows. And the comedic host made a comment or a joke that he didn't like. And so Will Smith walked up on the stage and smacked him. Created a lot of buzz all over social media and the news. But the reality of it is, a lot of us were amused by that. We thought that was bossy. We thought that was cool. That a grown man got offended because of what somebody said. That they could just interrupt an entire television broadcast and go up on the stage and physically assault someone. Now, whether you think that was right or wrong, that's not the point I'm trying to make. But some of these same people who applauded that are now outraged because we have government officials walking up to people and killing them based on what they said or what they look like. And I can hear you now, well, those are government officials. No, those are human beings. I don't care about their title. Somebody assaulted your loved one because of something they said, you would be outraged. But we laughed when we saw it all on social media, didn't we? It was fun and games, right? That was cool. That was bossy. That's what a leader is supposed to do. Many of us said that. And some of us didn't, but some of us did. We look at our current leadership and we pretend to be outraged, but the truth is their character has been the same. That's why I said we need to stop talking about them, because they are not the problem. Somebody chose them. someone right now is working for them. Someone right now. Let me compare and contrast that to real life. There are people right now who are watching people be abused, whether it's an adult, a child, whatever. And they don't say anything. A lot of times it's out of fear. Or maybe if they speak up, they have or they stand to lose something. But that's what's going on in the world now. People being abused and exploited. Inequality isn't new. Just read to you about the Fort Pillow Massacre. That was over 100 years ago. And they did the same thing. And while we're talking about that, let me just interject. For the young people who keep saying racism is over. Racism wasn't an event. Racism is based on hate. And when you hate someone based on what they look like or what they sound like or what country they were born on, in other words, things that they really don't have much control over. When you hate someone, you're talking about your mindset. It's laughable how why people keep talking about racism, it's over. Hate will always be a part of this mean, cruel, selfish world. We have people who make judgments and assessments based on superficialities, things that can change. How much money somebody got. What good is power? And you use it for all the wrong reasons. That's why I say it doesn't make a sense to me in many respects while we're complaining about these people. Somebody put them there. And if we don't learn how to make different decisions, guess what? It's a million Donald Trumps. And maybe not a million. I'm being facetious. But there are other Donald Trumps. Their name may not be Donald Trump. They may not look like him. They might not sound like him. But the mindset and the character is the same. Look at the head of DHS. This is someone who killed their dog because it would not behave. Could have gave the dog away. Could have drove to an open field and opened the door and let the dog out. Could have called a relative or a friend. Could have called a pound. Wasn't the only option, but that was the choice she made. Think about what I'm saying. She didn't like the dog. The dog didn't do what she wanted it to do. And she killed it. And this is the leader of ICE. That's her mindset. That's her character. So what do you think she says in her trainings? What do you think she says when she's giving them their pep talk? You know how you go into work and your boss lays down there. That comes from their character. So do we have the right to be outraged? Sure. I'm not saying we shouldn't be mad. But we actually should take some time to do a little bit of self-assessment. Because what we're seeing in the world is just a reflection of who we are or who we have become as a people. Maybe if we make better decisions in terms of judging leadership, or maybe if we modify how we critique not others, but ourselves. Let's be for real. You can't require more from someone else than you do for yourself. How dare you? Oh, so other people should act ethically and do the right thing, but you, who cares? You know, my life about me. I ain't got time to worry about these people. You know what I'm saying? I'm just worry about me, but you know. You get what you give. And if you think the world is messed up and falling apart, you're right. But the world is comprised of people. And as long as we have people who are unaware of their history, who don't develop the tools or are disinterested in learning about different resources. Just consider it. I had someone say, I just want to say this before I wrap up. I had someone say to me, actually, I've had several people say to me, I even heard celebrities say this. They don't try to learn from people that they don't want to be like. They don't listen to people, that they don't want to be nothing like them. And that is a naive and a closed-minded way to think, because you can learn something from anyone. That's also indicative of what we got going on. Because I guess y'all want to be billionaires, so you voted for the billionaires. That's how y'all think. Y'all want to be, y'all, do you really want to be like that? I mean, maybe you do. I don't know what your character or morality is, but I'm asking you to consider that. And if you don't see a version of yourself in the leaders that you are choosing, if you don't see a version of what you would hope that your children would be in the leaders that you are assessing, perhaps you should make better decisions. Just a thought. And if you do see the character, your character, and some of the leaders that you have chosen, that's also a reflection in a mirror. It's just amazing to me. I think a lot of us are in denial. And I'm not trying to suggest that everyone is bad or have bad intentions. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of us are. Because when you know better, you do better. And if we ain't doing better, then what's the cause of that? I hope that you've learned something today. In fact, I hope that you take a moment and research the Fort Pillow Massacre. I also hope that you reach out to your network, your children. It don't even have to be your children. You got nieces and nephews. You have children that you teach in your neighborhood. Teach them something. They got enough of this social media and know what Cardi B doing and Beyonce doing. Okay, that's cool. That's fun. But if we don't teach people how to think, they won't make better decisions. And if we don't make better decisions in assessing our leaders on a local and a national level, history, just like Fort Pillow Massacre and so many other things that have happened throughout history, will continue to regurgitate and repeat itself. Let's have the courage to take some time. You owe it to yourself. Looking at the viral social media posts and watching the news for 30 minutes, that ain't going to cut it. Read a book. Go to the library. Instead of watching the news, how about buy a newspaper? That's another thing I don't understand. You got people that's loyal to a particular station, already been proven that they liars. You can go on YouTube. I watched years ago. The guy is now dead, one of the founders, and they asked him, why did you what basis did you formulate this company? And he said, it was never about giving people the news. It was about telling people what they wanted to hear and presenting it as news. This was said decades ago. That man dead and gone. Go out there, look for yourself. That's what he said. And now, years later, they've already had to pay, what was it, $1 billion, $100 million, some astronomical fee for lying. Had their own commentators in a court of law say, yeah, I was lying. Yeah, they told us to say that. Yeah, that really wasn't true. And yet you still have people that won't turn to another station. And yet we surprised at what's going on. Come on now. We're better than this, and we have the ability to be better than this. Thank you for listening. I'm RDW. Check me out online at rdwcreationsenterprise.com. Subscribe to our website. Check out our Right blog. Check us out. We could use and would welcome your support. Bye for now.